lights go dim. It's time to find out what's within. Behind the camera, there's so much more. With the AndyGames, let's explore. Behind the camera with AndyGames. Meet the streamers, learn their names. Off the screen, who are they? Tune in now, don't delay.
Hello everybody and welcome to Behind the Camera with AndyGames. This is the podcast where I interview people in the world of content creation and beyond with the sole purpose of getting to know the person a little bit better behind the camera. In this episode, I sat down with Addie. Addie is an author, multidisciplinary creative and entrepreneur, the founder of the Gentle and Lowly Company, host of the Gentle and Lowly Co podcast, and currently writing her second book on prayer. With a background in graphic design and a heart for storytelling, Addie creates spaces where others can engage with faith, friendship, and purpose in meaningful gospel-rooted ways. Whether through writing, design, or conversations, her mission is to help others live with intentionality, hope, and a heart set on Jesus. Here is the interview. Addie, welcome to Behind the Camera with AndyGames. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. How are we doing today?
We are doing good. I'm coming from America. So I told you a little bit, Andy. I love Europe and overseas. I've been to France and Italy, and I'm really hoping to get back there to explore the UK and Dublin, Ireland. So as a photographer, as a creative, I'm that is definitely on my list. But today, doing pretty good in northern Indiana. It is 70 degrees here, which is amazing, just because we've had a little bit of a longer winter. So I'm excited to go for a golf cart ride maybe later this evening with my dog.
Incredible. Absolutely love that. And obviously we have a lot to cover today, especially you mentioned photographer, and I'm sure that falls into yourself being a multidisciplinary creative, which I won't lie, that's a phrase I've not heard before, but it absolutely fascinates me. And I kind of sat there earlier thinking, what does this mean? But I kind of think it sort of speaks for itself, being a creative in multiple disciplines.
Yes,
of course.
That's really it. My title, Andy, has changed so stinking much. I mean, we'll get into this more, but I started photography freshman year of high school for a photo class because I didn't want to draw, because I was no, that's too intimidating. I know I can't do that. Give me a camera. I think I could make that work and pass the class. And so you just kind of, as a creative, you just ebb and flow, be I think this is the right lane and this is it. But then you get into podcasting or video and you're wow, I actually like all these different things. Yeah. I guess I'm just multifaceted. What is the word for that? So that's kind of in itself. And it's a lot of fun though. It's a total journey. So
oh, absolutely. It is kind of amazing how you find one thing that you just really enjoy and the sort of avenues that opens up. Obviously if you started with your photography, moved on to podcasting, and of course you're an author, writer as well. So how did these things all kind of lead from one to the other kind of?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If we're here for the backstory, I love backstories. I think I said this on another podcast a little bit, where it's an origin story. Maybe I was in my conversation with a friend. And it is so fun because to me, I just feel you just kind of pick up on all these natural passions, and it just points back to wait a minute, maybe I should lean into that a bit more. So, that photography class, and I took photo too. And then my art teacher, I'm so thankful for her. I talk about her in the book and just that encouragement. And she was Addie, you could go to art school for this. That's a thing. And I was wait a minute. I didn't even have a concept of that. I knew you could be a photographer, but typically it's more of being a freelance photographer, and you don't go to school for it, and you kind of just work your way up, which a lot of my friends have done. And I really honor and respect that, because I think any education, however you learn, is education. And so that route, though, I'm very traditional in the sense where I love school. And so I checked out all these different schools, but in Indiana, there are a lot of great schools. I'll be honest. I love all the different places, a lot of opportunity, which I'm really grateful for, but I chose this really crazy. I mean, I feel it's crazy art school. It was the most expensive one, Andy. And I was didn't tell my parents, because I was there's no way we could afford it and anything. And so for me, as a Christian, as a believer of Jesus, I saw God just show up with scholarship after scholarship and just open the door wide open. And to not have nearly as many student loans, I know that's a big thing, even today that a lot of people carry around that weight with. And so I've just seen just God's hand in my story of just like, there's this passion, like, kind of blazing the door open. And so I was like, well, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. So my whole goal kind of and going to art school. I went to SCAD, which is Savannah College of Art and Design, for our friends. And we have a lot of international students too, which is a lot of fun, just getting to learn from different artists and things. So I loved that there was a hub for creatives. And I was like, wow, there's people like me here in that sense. And so I added my minor in graphic design like my junior year of college. And I thought I was going to be terrible at it, Andy. Like I was so scared because a lot of my friends were majoring in that. They were already developing their craft. And I was like, I'm a photographer. Am I going to be good at this? Like, it's just so hard to try something new and like fail at it. And it's like, it's okay. That's the whole point of school, but you can just get in your head and overthink that. So I added my minor, graphic design. I love it so much. It's a lot more what I do today, just, doing design and really kind of putting all the pieces together to create a really clear message, in graphics of social media or a poster, different things. But there's a little bit of video training, throughout college and things. But honestly, I worked in ministry and was an assistant director of communications after college for about a year. And in that type of job, that kind of role, you are in charge of a lot of different domains, kind of wearing those hats that we talked about a little bit. So you're in charge of the photo and some video stuff, all the announcements. And we even had a podcast in there, which is really fun. So I love that. I was first, honestly, I feel like most creatives are like consumers where you're just really interested in what other people do. And you're like, wait a minute, I think I could do this because I have the skills now because I was in the rooms, like the one, adjusting the audio levels for the podcast things or setting up the boom mic for announcements and having the teleprompter and things like that. So it has been so cool to see across like all my different positions, kind of professionally, where I pick up these different skills for my tool belt creatively, where I'm like, okay, I think I could do something with this. And why not try? I mean, podcasting was something, I guess when I was in, kind of more recording, it was in 2018, 19, 2020-ish, where I was kind of listening to it, then made that transition of just actually editing and learning that. And then 2020, I just felt really compelled to give some hope with creatives. And so I was like, okay, let's launch this first podcast. And I loved it. And a lot of my friends, I feel like, would be surprised now who grew up with me, like, wait, you're the one who's talking all the time? This does not make any sense. But honestly, I feel like now I'm like, wow, if there's just something that's a common thread, I'm like, I just want to talk to people and see what we have in common, especially with creativity. It's just so much fun because we all have a different viewpoint and a different expression of it. So, all these different things from photography, video, graphic design, podcasting, and then a little bit of like website building, which I'm not a coder. I have such respect for coders, but knowing how all the different pieces work together and integrate together helps you become a better creative. And I think that is such a helpful thing if you're in an agency kind of setting where you're like, oh, I actually understand what the video department's doing, and I'm the designer and how this copy is going to come into play. And so kind of picking up writing the last couple years, really, honestly, I always have enjoyed writing. I'm a big journaler just personally. And I feel like, I don't know, a lot of writers, they just have a lot of words then. You just have a lot of thoughts. And that was something that I honestly didn't think that, again, kind of that mindset of, with graphic design, I was like, I really enjoy this. I think I enjoy it, but it's really hard. Writing is just such a subjective thing, and it's really hard to get those reps in. And you're like, okay, I want this to be good. But again, everything that I do, I really want it to come back to a message of hope and to encourage people. And so that's why I felt really compelled to be like, I think if this encourages someone just to kind of beat these traps of comparison that I know I really fall into, especially being online, then why not, take some time to try and do this. And if I don't like it, okay, maybe then it's not the right lane to, kind of step away from. But for me, Andy, I loved it so much. It was so much fun getting to go to coffee shops or sit in my, kind of home office here and write. And so I am so blown away still that I have so many book ideas. I'm like, okay, don't think we're going to slow down anytime soon. So that's a very like kind of good backstory. But all that to say, wherever you are in your creative journey, I'd say try something new. You never know what will surprise you, what you'll enjoy, and you even think, oh, public speaking, like that's really daunting, or starting a podcast. But for me, I look back into my life. I love getting coffee with my friends and just having a conversation like this. So this doesn't feel as intimidating to me. And it's like, oh, you can look at your life and look at the things you are naturally like passionate about. So ask your friends or your family, the close people, and be like, hey, what do I talk about a lot? Or like, what do you see me doing a lot? You might get some insight there, and you might be able to, pick up another creative tool, to your tool belt.
Absolutely. And there are times sometimes that you'll find that you have hidden passions that you didn't know about until you start picking things up. Like, to go back to your example, when you went to college and graphic design was your minor, like that seemed to open up the door, or so many doors for you, like getting a proper behind the scenes sort of look, like we sort of touched on earlier with, in terms of just media and seeing all these different things. And I imagine there was like points where you're just like, okay, I never knew that, but this interests me, this, that. And then you kind of also learn what doesn't interest you. And it kind of helps sort of shape even all potential paths you can go down. And like you said before as well, if it didn't work out, you give it a go, but it just wasn't right. And there's other things that were, that are available. Another point that you touched on a couple of times, which to me has like particularly stood out, is the message of hope. Especially when you said you launched your podcast in around 2020, which a time where everybody needed hope, everybody needed hope. Like I kind of sounds like it was almost like meant to sort of come at that point, you reaching your podcast and sending that message out to people. So just on the theme of hope, like what is it around that is what's like the full importance surrounding that, like, from your own personal perspective?
Yeah, well, this is such a great question, Andy. And of course, I love talking about this. It's pretty evident where I am online in the spaces. But I will say, for the first kind of podcast for me to get to today with Even Gentle and Lowly Co., I had to start a few different podcasts. So that first one, it has about like 12 or 15 episodes, and it was about design conversations for me with friends and different creatives, focus on the gospel. And so for us as believers, if you're a Christian like me, where you feel like there is a creator and he's given you these tools, and how can you reflect back the, kind of the glory back to him and give it to him, because he's the one who put those tools in your hands. And that was a really core thread throughout college, where going to SCAD, it was a very, just really great kind of, cultivator of a lot of different people. And so you did have a lot of different beliefs, but also a lot of different friendships, which I'm so thankful for, and a lot of different kind of backgrounds and things. But the one thing that my community, we were really asking this question is, how can our projects in our classroom point back to the gospel, point back to, Jesus? And so for us, that is a message and a story of hope. And, we just celebrated Easter a month ago. That is like the pinnacle of the Christian faith, where we really believe that Jesus is who he says he is. And if you do, get to believe that message, where Jesus came, he lived a perfect life, and out of love and compassion, he surrendered, he sacrificed his life, and he came back. And like, that is an crazy and like wild message that, all of our sins are forgiven. And like, for me personally, Andy, like that message of hope for me has like radically transformed my life. And so I am going to tell everyone who is willing to just pull up a chair and be like, hey, this guy Jesus changed my life. And I see how I was striving in the world, and I still occasionally do, that's the whole point of like, I will always continue to, go to different things, because I'm like, for me, I'm like, that's why I need Jesus. And so, honestly though, everything I do from this creativity though is, all of these stories of hope, and really just having people on of like, okay, wherever they are, if they have a creative, profession that's not creative. Honestly, I wanted to get more of these stories of how are people carrying the gentle love of Jesus wherever they go. Because for me, I work full time in higher education as a graphic designer, and it's a lot of fun. And so there's a lot of different kind of people in our spaces and things, but so that's like a whole different kind of community. But then like having different conversations where people are teachers,
Yeah.
or you're a barista, like we say it a lot. But I really wanted to highlight all these different stories of like wherever your season is, like God can use you anywhere. And so for me, because that has radically transformed my life, I want people to know that they are loved, they are seen, they are chosen, and there's someone who radically loves them. And this man named Jesus changed my life. And so I love these conversations where we just get to talk about kind of just all these different connections and different facets of ways that we're seeing things where, you could say, oh, it's a coincidence, but we believe that it's God just bringing people together. And I've been more amazed. I mean, I'm still even amazed that you found me all the way in Ireland. Like, this is so cool. So that's a little bit of a longer, backstory again, but honestly, just so passionate where I'm like, for me, I just want to give it all back to him.
Of course. And like the whole subject surrounding faith is something that's like incredibly fascinating to me. And I would be on the sort of other side of the coin where like that's not sort of that's not where I live my life, it's because I just think that for me personally, I'm a huge believer of when you know,
Mm.
and whether it's a case of it not being my time yet or anything like that, that's kind of where I'm at on that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I absolutely love hearing people's perspectives on it because
Mm.
solely because of how much it means to people and how sort of big a message that like it carries with some people, and that they, people like yourself where you have a message you want to spread out to people who are willing to listen. And sometimes I think even people who aren't willing to listen, like sometimes there's a gap there sometimes where
Mm.
it can get through. Like I know a lot of people who have turned to faith and it's got them out of like particularly daunting situations, and it's
Mhm.
become like it's become like their entire life. It's like saved them completely. And to me, like it's just incredible how something just must click within people sometimes.
Mhm.
Like, has this been something that you have followed your entire life, or was there like a
Mhm.
specific turning point within your life where that made you go, yeah, this is how I'm living my life?
Mm. Yeah. Oh man, this is such a great question because I mean, for maybe some of our friends who are listening, they might be like me where they grew up in the church.
Mhm.
And so they've known this kind of message, this gospel, and it does become a little familiar, if I'm being honest. And then there's stories like other friends where they're just living life and then at rock bottom, they cry out and
Yeah.
God divinely intervenes. And it's incredible. And so for me, honestly, my testimony, some people would be like, oh, it's kind of, you could say boring, but I honestly look at God's protection in my life, and where I did have amazing parents where I was able to know the gospel at a young age, and I did have that faith. But honestly, Andy, I got it wrong so much where I was like, I felt like I had to always rededicate my life. It was like church camp, and it's like, okay, you're on the fire again. I was like, wait a minute, I did this thing. I'm like far from God. And so I had this kind of understanding or misconception of God where I was like, wait a minute, I don't actually have to do that. He paid it once for all. And
Yeah.
so once I kind of understood that, and I was like, well, okay, wait a minute, this actually is more of a journey with Jesus where I want to become more like him. I want to be more loving, more kind, more patient, more generous, all those things. Then he's able to kind of guide us so kindly and so gently as we go. And so honestly, though, it has not been easy, if I'm being honest. So, my book, I do talk about comparison and fellowship, and I do share like this combination of biblical truths, but also a lot of my personal story. And so I went to just a private Christian school, K through 12, like a long time. And so you kind of can get locked into like who you were as a kindergarten,
Yeah.
person all the way, at the end of it. And I was like, well, I've changed a lot, but at the same time, like I was a very quiet person. We kind of talked about that. And so I, was growing up, and it was a middle school, 6th grade, and this was like the unthinkable for me, Andy, where, I had a loving family, and I thought, my parents would never get divorced. That was never a thing at all. And it was 6th grade. It was right like on the new year, and I thought my dad would come back, but he left for some time, and he was still part of our family, of course. But that was a very hard time. It was like a time of 4 or more plus years where it was just a very interesting relationship with my dad, where I didn't really understand what was going on as a
Yeah.
kid. And I thought, oh, that would never be me. And so this kind of rocked my world. And really, I'm really thankful that it drew me towards God, because I
Yeah.
could have gone the totally other way. If I'm being honest, I know myself so well. I'm prone to that as well. But I'm thankful that I had that language, and it actually drew me to ask those hard questions at a young age of, why is this happening? I thought, like, this is really bad. This isn't good. This isn't fun. This is really hard for our family. I'm watching my family fall apart, and I don't know what to do, as a sixth grader, and then all the way up into high school. And so that was a very intense, season for our family, if I'm being honest. And I talk about that a lot in the book, and, wrestling with identity and all that comparison, and not having community of like who you could really talk to in, like, in high school about something that is that hard that you're going through,
Yeah.
honestly. And so I, found just a deeper dependence upon the Lord, where he met me. And, it's not a perfect answer. My parents did get divorced in high school and sophomore year. And I carried a lot of guilt and shame and kind of a lot of things that was my fault, and kind of misunderstanding all these things. But in God's kindness, he doesn't rush us to just get over something, or to be like, oh, well, that wasn't your fault, or just, cheer up or whatever. He will sit with us in that wrestling.
Yeah.
That's for my experience. And so there's a lot of different things kind of through that, though, where I begin to see who I truly was and what my right identity was, where, okay, I kind of picked this thing up and I probably wasn't supposed to carry that. And just walking through, honestly, reconciliation with my dad and even my brother and just our whole family, kind of what that looks like. And again, it's not perfect, there's still messiness, like holidays are hard with divorced
Yeah, of
families in ways
course.
where I want to honor, my step parents, and I want to honor my step siblings and all those things really well. But the thing is, when you can ask that question, and there's not honestly always like an easy answer of why bad things happen, right? Like, but when you really ask that, you wrestle with it, you're gonna have to draw some kind of conclusion. And so for me, it was a lot of wrestling and looking at scripture and looking at it and be like, okay, do I really believe this? Do I really believe who Jesus is? And even since then, going to college and then post grad, 5 years and things, there are always going to be, hills and valleys, mountains, and then all those valleys and things. And so there have been some of the deepest joys in following Jesus, and I'm so thankful. But at the same time, I think sometimes when you look at people who have so much hope, it is because they are so well acquainted with grief,
Yeah.
or they know suffering. And in all honesty, like, there are a lot of prayers that I'm still praying that I don't fully know the answer, and I don't think I will, but that's where faith comes in.
Yeah.
And so, Andy, I know that's a huge, kind of much longer answer. And I know this is a podcast where we're talking more about behind the camera, but it is a huge part of my life. And so
Mhm.
I don't take it lightly. And I think, being honest about those doubts when those things come creeping in, I think it's a healthy thing to question, like, okay,
Yeah.
wait, like, my life is built on this. Like, do I really believe it? And even in scripture, we see Paul, he says, if Christ did not raise him from the grave, it is worthless. Like, it is void. And so again, that it all comes back to faith. And I do believe that that's a gift from God that he gives us. And it's a huge thing. And so my job, I feel like, and being a creative and having these tools again, just to help scatter some seeds and, make more friends along the way, and, have more conversations like this.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, of course. But first of all, never worry about like the length of an answer or anything like that, because like everything you just said, that's what all this is about. Just want to just put that out there, because like that's an incredible story. That's an incredible perspective, especially from the mindset you had at that time, where it was like that could never happen to me. Because I think that's something that like so many people go through
Yeah.
in like all kind of walks of life. And like in your position, like that was a real test of your faith,
Mhm.
because as you said, like it brought you closer to God, whereas with a lot of other people, it could have done the exact opposite thing. And this is what makes me curious, because I obviously I think it's probably too general a sort of answer to sort of like nail down, but like, what does that possibly come down to? Where you have this like crisis of faith, but it's one way or the other. But what is it within a person that kind of
Hmm.
helps you sort of make that decision as whether it brings you closer or it pulls you away? This is I don't know if this
Ah,
is like something you could answer or if it's just something that
mm.
really is comes down to the individual, but it is something that I am always curious about when people kind of like lapse in their faith in that sense.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. And I think that answer, if we're being honest, it will vary, depending
Hmm.
on the person, of course. But I also, I'm gonna go back to scripture, and it's in Romans, I believe, where it tells kind of about all of God's glory and all of his creation, where all of his invisible attributes. So, I mean, we've talked about like the beautiful scenery, and that's why I love traveling, where I get to see more of my creator and more of his creativity,
Yeah.
where I feel like he just shows off and he just continues to wow me. And I'm like, okay, I am so small on this earth. Like, okay, I know that for me, I'm like, he is who he is. But in all honesty, Andy, like everyone has like, I feel like there is a representation of what he's doing where you look at a beautiful sunset and you look, okay, like I can't create that. I can capture it, right? But I can't do that. And you just look at, for me, I feel like you look at the entire world and you see evidence of him all around, how there's all these different intricacies of how everything is built so minutely. And, my whole story too, I mean, there's even more of it. Um, but honestly, I mean, some of my, most of my close friends know, and other friends know that my brother and I, we were both adopted from birth, different birth families, and so that's something that I'm still kind of always questioning, not always
Yeah.
questioning, but like always like I look back at this this story of if you're like of your life, and you look at, okay, well, God had a plan to put me exactly right in this place, and so like he like I look at scripture again. He chose different people, like he chose them for a purpose and for a reason and out of love and compassion. And so like, Second Peter, you're a royal priesthood, you're chosen, for a purpose. And so I look at all these different things that in my life that just aren't coincidences,
Yeah.
but at the same time, when there are seasons where you are literally like, maybe people don't know this, but when it is a hard season and it's like, why? Like literally why? This is so hard. And these are other things that, just other different seasons, you're like, this, I didn't think this was going to be this hard, or you really
Yeah.
allowed this to happen, like something else that was just crazy. Um, I want to encourage people that, you might just think that God is a big man in the sky and he's, taking orders or doing things or being a genie. And, we all have this perspective of God, and you can have a high view where he is that really high and mighty guy, or a really low view where he was walking on the earth. And also, fully God, fully man. But so it's helpful to balance those things. But sometimes if we can get too caught up in one or the other, whichever way we sway, we can kind of believe that he doesn't want to hear our hard questions, like,
Yeah.
or we can't like actually be honest with him, like we can't be like, I'm really disappointed, or I'm really mad about this, or this really sucks. Like, I think the thing to remember, Andy, is like, I mean, for me, like, God isn't surprised by everything. If I believe he's all knowing, I believe he's, like, he's all powerful, all these things. He knows exactly like what I'm thinking. He knows what I've been
Yeah.
through. He knows my heart. Why can't I bring those things to God? And so I do talk about that even in the book. That's a huge thing for me. But just like exploring that, and also just prayer, that's like my next book, what I'm writing about, because I feel like there's been this depth since a young age where I'm like, okay, like you don't have to rehearse, it doesn't have to look a certain way, you just come honestly, and there is a deeper love and friendship like with God, which is like a crazy wild thing to say. I know that's crazy, but honestly, like I have such good friends who like they know me so well. Then they love me really well, and we show up for one another across the states. We're all kind of spread out from college and things, but um, Jesus meets me in the ways where it's 2 a.m. and no one's there.
Yeah.
Or like I'm driving home, from a thing, or something happened, or I'm really sad, or I'm really excited. And it's in both of those things he's able to meet me. And so it is really hard to wrestle with these things, but I think the sooner you wrestle with some of those questions, you're going to have an answer. I think the biggest thing though that I would encourage people is, you know, this is what drives me kind of. It's like we honestly aren't guaranteed
Yeah.
like tomorrow.
100%.
We're really
100%.
not. And so that is something where I'm like, okay, I am gifted with another day to honestly live. Like I don't deserve it. If I believe I'm sinful and I believe I deserve death because of my sin, that separates me from God, but praise Jesus because he paid all that. But if that is true for me, it compels me to do something with my life. Like
Hmm.
I want to do something. And so I want to share that. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that there aren't, those days or those
Of
nights where
course.
you're like, well, where are you?
Yeah.
And I have found that he is the closest friend, in times of need and in times of joy.
Absolutely. Like, I have to say, like, your sort of perspective on things and like your sort of history with it as well. Like, it's somewhat similar to my wife's. Like, my wife has an incredibly strong faith, and it's something that
Mhm.
she was brought up with herself. Um, and like, just to touch on your point where, you were in like a Christian school, you went to church camp, but like during these times, you felt like you were doing these things wrong. And then with that, then your faith became more of like a personal thing
Mhm.
for yourself, which I think is like an incredible thing. That's not a perspective that I'd ever really kind of been exposed to until I met my wife. Because for
Mhm.
me, everybody like I'd ever met with a faith, it was like church every single week, of scripture, and like it was
Mhm.
everything was like just very much focused on the organized religion side, but less so the personal faith and what that means to
Mhm.
you. And like okay, well, I can do these things. I can do like there seems to be, it feels like a little bit more freedom behind that. And like I have these conversations with my wife a lot, and like her history behind it is like she won't mind me saying this, but like she went to church every single week, but she found that there was like a lot of things she didn't agree with what
Mhm.
was being said, but that never made her question anything. But if in
Mhm.
anything, it brought her closer to God
Yeah.
with her own personal faith because of how she interpreted. And she's told me before, she's read the Bible cover to cover. It took her a very long
Yeah.
time to do, but she read it,
That's
understood it,
awesome. Yeah.
and like that's how she lives her life. And like, but that's something that she has done, interpreted it her own way through her own personal faith. And like I think it takes like a special kind of person to be able to do something like that, to be able to just take it whatever way you interpret it, and that's how you live your life. But you're living your life for the best possible reasons, the best possible purpose. And like I say, like I think like it just fascinates me, the different sort of perspectives. But like from it being a personal thing, and this is how you live your life, because there's like that kind of two-way street with yourself and your relationship with God, I think. And I think that's kind of like a healthy balance, really. And it's just to me, it's just incredible. Like it is honestly one of the more fascinating things, especially because that's not like that's I don't have that myself, but like
Mhm.
I'm fairly content. But it's just I just love seeing the sort of like hearing other perspectives. So like we've alluded to your book, your first book,
Mhm.
Fellowship Over Followers. And from what I've gathered, this is sort of based around your own personal experiences. So, what
Mhm.
more can you tell us about the book, like, and about sort of how you came to writing and releasing the book, and then about your second book that's in the works
Yeah.
about prayer?
Yeah. Oh, this is a great question because I feel like, sometimes it's so easy just to see a book online and be like, oh, that's so cool. Or that's like, okay, awesome. It's a book. It's another one. Do I really need it? And I would say yes. It is encouraging to read, from different perspectives and different things. I'm learning more and more of how important this type of work is in just our digital world and landscape, and
Hmm.
how words just are such a connector of people. And so it's a lot of fun. I'll say that. But honestly, it goes all the way back to 2020, really, when I'm being honest. Yeah, 2020. And I had this kind of idea of, it'd be really fun to write a book, or, writing a book about, something Christian, kind of self-help, in a sense of like, okay, like what could I look to my life and see, oh, I've actually walked through a lot of these things, and I think this could help some people, right? And so it was in that ministry job where we had like professional development plan. And I don't know. Do you like the Enneagram, Andy, at all? Do you know?
I'm not sure what
Okay.
it is now.
Okay. So it's like personality. So like if you're this number, if you identify this is
Oh,
like,
okay.
like more of kind of what your wheelhouse is. I guess that's the best way for me to
Mhm.
quickly explain it. And I can give you a link of some free tests and stuff, because
Oh, yeah.
it's really helpful to be self-aware. So
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
love
Oh,
it so
I would
much.
love that. I'd love to take that
Okay.
test.
It's really
I'll put
fun.
that in the show notes as well, because I
Yes.
think
Okay.
that'll be
You and your wife
good for
should
someone
take
to
it.
take. Yeah, I think that'll be
Yeah.
good for people
And
to
our
take
friends.
from this. So 100%.
Okay. So the Enneagram is so much fun. And after you take it, it'll make a little more sense. But I closely identify as a 4 with a wing 3. So 4s are typically creative, also a little more, you could say stubborn or sensitive. There's, some of the good things and the weaknesses. You've got to be aware of those things. But very visionary and creative. But then the 3 side, that's more the higher achiever who's goal oriented and very goal setting and all those things, where you get really excited. And like usually they're the people who are like have the very intense, like, morning routine. They're already up at 5:30 or something. I'm like, I don't know if that'll ever be me, maybe in a season. But I do understand, like, getting things done. It is so rewarding, kind of like
Yeah.
a dopamine effect in a way. All I have to say though, so when there was a professional development chart and different things, I was like, okay, I'm in. I love organizing like by quarters and project management systems and different things. And so I was like, okay, this seems really fun. I am going to love this. And a lot of people, it kind of felt like homework for them, but I was like, I'm here for it. Put me in, have someone to come alongside of me and invest in me. I said, this is awesome. So I wrote some pretty lofty goals on there. Something about, okay, working out more, exercising, things like that. And then even, reading more of the Bible. And the biggest thing though was like, I think, writing the book, but I think I did a podcast on that too, if I remember right. But I know the book one was there, and that was a huge thing. And so that was just like kind of the first idea of it, I guess, in my later adulthood, and just thinking about, there's always like those self-doubt thoughts of like, well, I can never do that. Like, who would read it? Like, does it even matter? There's already someone who's written about this topic. And also, I'm pretty young. I mean, I'm 27 right now, but when I started writing it, I was like 24, 23.
Mhm.
I mean, by the time it came out, 26 and stuff. And so there's all those kind of voices of limiting beliefs that we can believe. And so it was then the whole like next year, after I kind of had this idea of like, okay, I see community and then fellowship, biblical fellowship in my life, a lot of examples in that. And I had this whole table of continents, and I was like, this is really weird that I have this whole kind of like skeleton of a book. I just need to like fill it with stories. So I sat on that for a whole year. 2021 rolled around, and then I had a lot of encouragement from my body of community at the time. And it kind of just rallied around me of like, actually, Addie, like, this could be a thing that God wants you to
Yeah.
step into. So that was a huge thing, because, without their encouragement, I don't know if I would have even believed in myself, honestly. And so there's like a campfire worship night thing. And someone was like, I think someone here has something to say what God wants them to do, but they might be a little nervous about it. And I was like, oh gosh, that's me. Are you kidding? Like, I am just the one who's like, I just want to sit here, chill out and, sing songs and hang out with friends, and just kind of be in my own little bubble sometimes. But I was like, nope, I'm supposed to say this. I'm supposed to continue to use my voice, use that creativity. And so they're all really good friends, just sharing it. And they're like, wow. Like at the end of that, I was like, so I think I'm supposed to write a book. And they're like, okay, I didn't know that's what you're going to say. It's like, yeah, neither did I, but like, I guess they did. So then it was like a huge, kind of crazy, season where I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go all in. I think
Yeah.
I'd do it differently now as I am doing it differently. But it was a huge, intense writing season where I like wrote the book in maybe 6 to 9 months. And again, it's the first one, so learned a lot of different things, and I'm gonna be able to revise things in this next book of, okay, this is what I should do differently and how I can adapt to that as a creative and different things. But the coolest thing is when you step out into something new that you're like, I don't know if I'm going to be good at this, or this seems really terrifying. And there's all those self-doubt things. I think the biggest practice for me was one, showing up, to a space, to a spot. So that was like one of my local coffee shops. Love it so much. And they have some nice writing desks or different things, and being consistent of
Yeah.
like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to clock in and I'm just going to sit there. And if nothing comes out, okay, but I'm going to try to write something. It's so daunting. It really is. And I did like realize when there were sometimes when I would sit down, I'm like, okay, this feels like it's too forceful, or I'm just trying to pull things out. And so for me, I'm like asking the Holy Spirit, going to prayer and be like, okay, Lord, I want to write what you want to put on here. Like, I don't really want it just to, just be a lot of fluff or be what I want to say. I want it to be what he wants to say. And so that was the biggest thing where I just really saw anything, I was doing any of the writing, just being a worship, being an offering to him. And so I did see a very big difference where I was like, okay, kind of having that heart shift. And it's like, oh, I couldn't keep up with typing and writing. So all that to say, though, it was a ton of fun that I honestly love the process so much. And that really surprised me. And even though I'm an introvert, again, I think I've grown in my extrovertness a lot, just like, being friends and communicating and different things. It's just a lot of fun now. So, all that to say, though, writing is like a very solo activity. So, the introverted side of me loves it. I do enjoy that. But the other time, like, you're like, okay, this is really hard. And it is like, it's a grind to do that where it's just yourself. And so, having this good sounding board of some people around you where you could be like, hey, could you read this thing, make sure it's good, it's helpful, kind of see some different things. And so did have that kind of community and people. And again, I think I'll do it differently this next time because I learned more things of what to do, to do it right. But the biggest thing I could say is, again, go into this main thread of, you don't know, like, you have no idea. And even though it's hard work, like, the satisfaction to be able to hold something, like, and it's done.
Oh
And
yeah.
again, like, I love school growing up, I still do. So I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense. It's like a giant paper, which doesn't sound fun, but like putting it into this whole book and this whole package, hopefully to share some encouragement with people to kind of beat comparison. I mean, we all get, fall into that trap so much. And I'll be the first to admit, like, it is hard. And so it's like, hey, here's some hope. I really
Yeah.
pray that it's helpful and you'll really be able to find some deeper friendships. I believe that, that's with Jesus, that there's just a different way of living, that we're actually going to, bear those burdens with one another. And so even kind of going back to even how, like, my faith, like, people have always been along the way. It's never a solo activity, by myself. There's always people pouring in or being like, hey, I need some faith today. Like, can you give me some of yours? Can you encourage me in this? So that is where we are so much better together, where we're able to encourage one another to go out and do the things we feel called to do wherever we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And like what I particularly love about that is like when it came to you initially starting to write your book, you had everything there that you wanted to say, but you just needed that one little push in that group setting to be able to just
Mhm.
I guess you could say to really truly believe in yourself that you could do it. And like it is
Wow.
one of the more freeing things. I think this kind of applies to like sort of every walk of life. Like if
Mm.
you have your doubts, your anxieties about things, as soon as you just say it to somebody or even
Mhm.
just say it out loud, it then becomes a reality because it's out there in the world now. And it's like,
Mhm.
wow, okay.
Wow.
And it's like it's almost as if like how you sort of turn into an extrovert from an introvert, or an
Yeah,
introverted extrovert or extroverted
so
introvert, whichever
true. I
way,
know.
you know,
I don't
it's
know
like
what the right name is, but it's
I
there.
think I think there's like a sort of fine balance between the two
Yeah.
things because
Mhm.
and it's like it's a similar thing to when you start a podcast as well, like
Yeah.
and you know, because like to take the point that you mentioned where people will come to you for like advice on these things now, like, because you've
Mhm.
done it, you've like learned all these different writing styles from your own personal experience, you've learned so much about like yourself, your own experiences, just like from putting your thoughts down on a page from your experiences. And like I think that's like such an incredible thing. And like the same thing does apply to when you start a podcast as well, because
Mhm.
everybody has a voice,
Yep.
everybody wants to use their voice, some for more wholesome reasons than others sometimes, but that's just the world
Yeah.
we live in, to be honest.
Fair. It's honest.
But
Yep.
yeah, like, and it's the sort of thing, like, you know, when people see that you are doing something, when people see that, you know, you have been given the confidence to do something, or whether it came from within, whether you had that little push, like, you know, people respond like incredibly well to that. And like
Mhm.
they as again to sort of go back to what you say, so people want to kind of like in a sense feed off that faith, and they want a bit of that
Mhm.
faith themselves. And like faith is in some ways like a contagious thing for some.
Mm.
Like it's and that's why, and that's like sort of like it goes back to the point like I make, that it's like that's why it's like so fascinating to me. Like it's like the sort of self-belief that it gives people is just sort of like it's incredible to me. Like I think, and
Yeah.
it's like it makes you really kind of believe that you can do anything, and the reason that is
Mhm.
reason why is because you can, which
Yeah.
I just think it's incredible. So regarding your first book then, so it's called Fellowship Over Followers.
Mhm.
Now my guess on this would be that it kind of like takes like a sort of more contemporary spin on things in terms of like the, let's say, the digital age that we're in. And like
Mhm.
now going from the title myself here, followers, a lot of people in this digital age, they're concerned about
Yeah.
how many like followers they have on social media, like how they're what sort of engagements they're getting, things like that. Like does it sort of in a way come across that sometimes people in this age, particularly this like sort of newer generation, that the whole idea of faith is like almost forgotten, like
Mm.
at the expense of followers? Or what's the sort of inspiration behind the title?
Mhm. Oh, love this question so much because in all honesty, there's usually like a couple of different working titles, you
Mm-hmm.
have. And so the first one was friendship over followers. And I was like, well, that's not really true. I mean, true when you look at the way that Jesus modeled his life and he had his apostles or his disciples, and you would say his closest friends, his very deep friends. But then he had the 12, and then he had those three. And so he models this very unique and different way where it is deep, deep fellowship. I mean, when you like realize that, Jesus was fully God and fully man, and he is like, he chose these people to hang out with. He had friends, and they saw him at like his worst and his best, and when he was exhausted and tired, but also laughed with them, went to weddings with them,
Mm-hmm.
like joking on the side of the road, and whatever, like, oh, Peter, come on, like it's just so fun to think about, just like how they lived their life in that way where they were in the thick of it and
Mm-hmm.
everything. And so there is this lie, especially for those of us who do this type of work where we want to encourage people, we want more people to know what we're doing, because we want to be successful in that way. But it is so easy to just get consumed with numbers. I mean,
Yeah.
regardless of who you are, even if you're just you're just posting, sharing your life, you're like, oh, no one's liking it, or this is, is this bad? Like you just go into this downward spiral of your self-worth. And so if
Yeah.
you don't have anything to attach it to, like you can just spiral, so much. And I think everyone, I'll be the first to admit, I've been there, and it's not fun. It really isn't. And this is kind of, coming back to that hope of like, okay, well, is there a different way? Like, is there someone who designed you? Is there a creator we can point to where you can have answers to these questions? But honestly, fellowship like is just such a beautiful gift from God. And when we get that relationship right with him, then it can just be an overflow into others, and we can breathe life into them, breathe courage into our community. And, that lie of that, oh, if we have more followers, we'll be happy, or that will be like when I made it, or like that will be it. And I am, again, going back to those friends in college, like those are the ones, like I'm so glad, like there's probably 10 or 12 of them that I'm like, those are the people like
Yeah.
we've done life with, like it will be 10 years like this year, like we've done a lot of seasons of life. And I'm so grateful for like the seasons that they are all in, where, you know, they're having their second kid or first kids. And I'm so excited to be the cool aunt, you know, be Aunt Addie. Like that's definitely my title. And Kodak, my dog, like, you know, we are, I guess, the ones who kind of can come to them and be the caravan, which is just a huge gift, honestly. But also being hopeful of like, okay, whatever the season looks like for me, like how can I show up in it well? And so there are different opportunities, if I'm being honest, that like I have more time. So it's like, okay, I can do more things in that sense. But all that to say though, kind of even though our seasons look different as friends, like there's this core thread of you've seen me at my worst,
Yeah.
at my best, and also like we've continued to have that bridge throughout seasons, where you're in very different life stage than I am, but we can still like we still have that foundation of
Yeah.
friendship. And that is like there's such the encouraging thing. So I'm like, I would always rather have those 10 to 12 like close friends, or the three people who really really know me super well, rather than thousands and thousands of followers. And the reality is like I also want there to like kind of combat this lie that, you know, if you already have those friends, that there's not room for more people to come into your life. There's also seasons of friendship, you know, when
Yeah.
seasons fade away, and that's also okay. That it really is okay. But the reminder that there is always room for more people at the table to be like, hey, you also like pickleball, or like Chick-fil-A, or this kind of fast food, this restaurant, or you like golden doodles. Like, okay, let's be friends, you know, let's maybe
Yeah.
just go to lunch or something, or go get coffee. And I always want to be that person, you know, hopefully in a room where I'm going to look to someone who doesn't have a friend, because the reality is I know so well what it's like to be that person, you know, and I want to be interested and hear their story and what they're doing, and hopefully encourage them to live a life on purpose and on mission, whatever that looks like for them. And for me, I would believe that hopefully, you know, they would find Jesus and they get to see, oh, wow, I didn't even know that was inside of me.
Yeah.
Like, okay, what are we going to do with that? So again, kind of a longer answer. I like all this backstory. That's definitely my thing. That's why I write and things like that. But even then, kind of like, you know, with the next book and stuff, it's a different type of book. And so this writing process is just so interesting, where it's like, okay, I did it once. I know I can do it again, like by the grace of God. I can do it again, but it is just so interesting when you're creating something that you don't know exactly how the finished product is going to be,
Yeah.
but it's so fun at the same time. It's such this weird, like, you know, kind of tension.
But of course, it must be like an exciting kind of tension as well,
Yeah.
because
Oh,
like
yeah.
if you're writing another book that has like a different process behind it, because like obviously with a lot of writers, like I suppose probably like maybe fiction and certain nonfiction titles, like, or authors I should say, where it's like they have a writing style, but this is how they get their message across. But like that's sort of, you're looking at more things that are like either storytelling or
Mhm.
fact based, whereas like from your perspective, it's your experiences. Your
Yeah.
experiences are always going to be different. You're always going to like,
Mhm.
and you're always going to sort of not remember them differently, but like when you think back to them, you might have different emotions about them at different times. And like,
Mhm.
I think that sort of like makes for a much more interesting writing process, because like I think it kind of really highlights the impact of the experiences that you've had, and like how really well that they sort of translate and can sort of translate out to other people who are reading them. But to touch on your point about your first book, like what I excuse me, what I particularly enjoy about that was like it's testament to the sort of power of togetherness, really. Like, and like you say, you take your group of friends, you're scattered across the countries, you're all at different points in your lives, but like because that bond is there, like you guys still get to like celebrate each other's lives
Mhm.
with each other. And like that's sort of, what more could you want like out of life? And I think that is something that you do come to realize like with age as well.
Oh, yeah.
Like I for me, like I'm 31 years old, and
Mhm.
like I have one group of friends I've had since I was about maybe 18, 19. They're
Yeah.
there for life, they're there for life.
Yeah.
And like we may not have as much contact with one another, but it's the same idea. We're all at different points of our lives, like people like living in different places, people married, kids,
Yep.
this, that, and the other. And we're all working guys too. And it's one of those things. But like regardless of all that, we're only ever like a message away from one another. And it's like, it's just as if there was never any sort of time in between that. And then even like last year, a couple of years ago, like in my late 20s, early 30s, like you say, there's always room at the table for more people. Like I made friends with groups of people in like an online space whenever I kind of had more online exposure. And it's like sometimes like when you meet people like that, like based on like a common interest, as you say, like, nobody wants to be that person alone at the party, but like there is always someone there who can sort of bring them out like that. And that's kind of like the embodiment of like what, these conversations that I like to have with people, because everybody has a story to tell, and like I think it's like an incredible sort of, you never know what sort of like experiences people have had and everything, what necessarily that they have to offer and everything, like, and there could always be something incredibly special that like could be life changing to some people. Like they just haven't, they didn't know they needed to hear it at that point. And I think that's like an absolutely incredible perspective, like, in, from your experience as well. Like absolutely love that. So as well, just I just wanted to touch on as well. So you have your own podcast as well, Gentle and Lonely Co., which you're also the founder of as well. So what can you tell us about Gentle and Lonely Co. as it is, as an entity itself, and the podcast as a tie-in through that?
Yeah, again, of course, I love talking about this. It's so much fun. But first, I do want to echo everything you said, Andy, of like, we all have a story to tell, and you're just so kind to be like, hey, I wanted to come on my podcast, and I get
Thank
so
you.
excited. Like, this is just so fun. And so I really want to thank you, and just, being such a gracious host, and you do this really well. So
Thank you. I
all
appreciate that.
it's been a lot
It
of
means a
fun, and
lot.
it's so cool what technology can do. So we're definitely friends by now, and hopefully get to be friends with your wife too. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
So cool. So Gentle and Lilico, though, I again like kind of picking up all these different creative, things that I can do. It goes back again kind of to when I was on staff in ministry, where that first podcast was. I felt like this kind of compelling thing where it was like, okay, I have all these friends here, this is great, I'm kind of creating this stuff for our church, serving it really well, but it's like, who am I telling like this message to who doesn't know that, like, if I believe I'm carrying hope, like I want to share it with people, I want to give it to the world, or share it with some friends who I think, it's changed my life. Like, I pray that it can change theirs. And so I felt really compelled then to do something. So that's where that first podcast came. And so that's always been a reoccurring theme of like, whatever I do, I want there to be purpose, and I want there to be mission with it. And it has to have meaning. Like, that's definitely something as an Enneagram 4 where I'm like, it has to have this core thread. So that's definitely something about me. But then kind of fast forward a little bit, I think it was another year or two, then I was just in a season where you kind of still am to some degree, but I was definitely in a season where I had more autonomy in my schedule and just time. So my church had several different mission trips where they're domestic, in the States, but then one overseas. And I was like, I'll go. Like, I can have someone watch my dog. My family's amazing with that. Like, it's like I can figure out Kodak where he needs to stay, and a couple days here or there. And so I just was in a season of saying yes a lot, and just being willing to volunteer and to serve and give back. And so went to Kentucky, Dawson Springs, and there's a pretty big tornado down there. And then Chicago, and then I believe it was Honduras, for the second time. And
Wow.
so, building a house for a lady, we kind of helped, kind of laid some foundation and things. I probably did more walking around and praying for people and talking and things. The guys did a lot of manual labor, if I'm being honest, but we did a lot of different things, and like, it's all meaningful. Just sitting with people is all meaningful. So I was in that kind of season, and the Kentucky one was the big one for me, where I was also one of the younger ones on the trip because most people were retired because they had time to go. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. Just like I feel so compelled just to be sent or to live purposely. And then I was loving what I was doing. But again, like for me, the gospel deserves my creativity to give it as an overflow and a gift to God. And I was like, well, I have this idea. It's not a crazy idea, but I'm a graphic designer. I really love t-shirts and sweatshirts. Like I love to be cozy, especially like, in the northern hemisphere in Indiana, kind of the Midwest. It's pretty cold most of the time, except the summers, but we have long winters and fall is a great time and so we have all the different seasons. It's really awesome. But I like to say, like, I was like, well, I know how to design stuff. It might not be super complex designs, but it's really fun and it shares hope.
Yeah.
It shares encouragement. And so there in a church on a couch in the second floor, I was like, okay, let's design this. And then Gentle and Lowly Co. Like there's all these different names, like Gentle Redemption, and my whole heartbeat, like, kind of going off like, okay, I want this to be a message of gospel hope and to share Jesus, but in a way that is loving and compassionate, and it moves people forward into a conversation. And so that's where we landed on Gentle and Lowly Co. And I have to shout out my dad to help brainstorming different names, and also my friend Mia. There's a couple different friends, and Haley. Like I was like, okay, does this sound okay? Like, or is this weird? Or just kind of going through those things. And so it goes back to scripture again, Mark 10:45, and it's that scripture where Jesus came to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many, where, again, like my life is not my own. And so I'm looking to Jesus and I want to lay it down for my friends. And that is just the kindest, most selfless thing anyone can do, I think. And so it is, all of this overflow. So Gentle and Lowly Co. We are, in our third year. We'll celebrate 3 years in October, and so learning a lot of different things about how to actually like intentionally run a business well, while also being a ministry, like at the heartbeat for me, where it is an overflow of that. But Gentle and Lowly Co. exist to help you carry the gentle love of Jesus wherever you go, and I'd classified as a Christian, curated clothing brand or apparel brand with joyful accessories, just to do that. So it's a lot of fun where I really enjoy like wearing t-shirts, sweatshirts, also art prints or cards. Like I'll still send postcards to my friends when I travel, or, letters. Like I sent a couple last week from a farmer's market. And I just think there's something to that of like, we can share encouragement, we can share hope. And, it's pretty, like, it's kind of pretty bold. I've had a lot of people tell me like, oh, this is awesome. Like, and I've just gotten to meet a lot of different believers from it, which is so cool because I would have no idea, if I'm being honest. Like, we probably wouldn't have actually had a conversation. And so that's been one of the coolest things. But it's just, yeah, going back to that encouragement. And so, the podcast, though, is such an extension of the heartbeat, where it's one thing to wear a t-shirt, to buy that, or to buy a sticker and stuff. And of course, buy all the things. It's so much fun. It's just fun and it's exciting. And, hopefully my heart and my prayer is that it does open up conversations for people. And it also just sort of reminds you like to carry the gentle love of Jesus, whatever you're doing, wherever you are. But the podcast is more where we're getting into those conversations of, okay, I believe this, but how do I actually do it? Like sometimes I think like we do have to go on mission trips all the time. And right now it's probably not a season I'm in. Like I won't say no because, I like whatever God wants to do. I'll be like, okay, if I need to go, sure. Always want to be obedient to that. But sometimes we think that we do have to go so far when God's like, I planted you here for a reason. Like go talk to the person at the grocery store. Like, like it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be rocket science. Really, it's not. I mean, when we look to Jesus in the Gospels, you see him just going about different towns. He was in Nazareth, and I've been to Israel, which is just incredible blessing of just being able to see this landscape and you really understand just like the region more, just like the context of what life was like, honestly. So they're walking, between different cities and towns and things, and it's just so cool where Jesus is like, hey, you want to come follow me? And there was more conversation before that, but he's just picking people up and he's just going about his day, and they're going, living a nomadic lifestyle. And you just think like it wasn't like it wasn't easy. Like living
Yeah.
that lifestyle was not easy at all, but it wasn't overly complex,
Yeah.
you know, where we believe that it has to look this certain way, or it has to be this specific set of rules, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and what I find most interesting about that is that, like, you will never know, like, if you have something in common with somebody, or if
Mhm.
they're too are a believer or whatever it may be, if
Yeah.
you don't just go up and talk to people. Like,
Mhm.
we are on this planet, we have free will, we can do this. And
Yep.
like, whether it be whether we are meant to do this or not,
Mhm.
we can. That's a sort of
It's
like
true.
and that's sort of, I kind of think as well, like with the current state of the world that we're in right now, like it's almost as if like people are afraid to do that. People don't have that kind
Mhm.
of like drive, or there's a lot of anxiety surrounding things like that,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
like nobody wants to approach people anymore. People don't want to be approached
Yeah.
anymore. Like it's kind of like people aren't really as accepting anymore in terms of
Mhm.
somebody coming up to them in the street with like, you never know what their message is going to be. And it's
Mhm.
but then I think it does come down to that kind of thing where if somebody does stop, then
Mhm.
they were meant to, kind of thing. It's like
Yeah.
it's a
Mhm.
very interesting perspective. And like I definitely have been in like certain situations in my life, and like I know a lot of people who have as well, where they've been like, I feel like that was meant to happen today. I
Mhm.
feel like that was meant to happen. And it's
Yeah.
a sort of like, it's a strange feeling that I
Mhm.
can't really put any words to it
Yep.
personally, because it's like, what are the odds of that? It's like a lot to process, and it's like
Oh,
it
yeah.
is just a very, very interesting thing. And like I kind of
Mhm.
I love that people have that kind of in their head where it's like, that was meant to happen. God
Mhm.
put that path in front of me, and I was meant to walk it. And like I absolutely love that perspective on things. Like it is like a, I know I've said this a lot today, but it is it's just incredibly fascinating to me. Like
Yeah.
I love hearing about these types of
Mhm.
perspectives, because like it's, and I think for me it's like nice that it's nice to see that people have this like in their lives. People live their
Mhm.
lives by this, and like, it is just, it's bliss for them. Obviously, it comes with with its challenges, of
Mhm.
course, but
Yep.
they feel safe and content with their faith, their belief that it's going to
Mhm.
get them through each day, regardless of its challenge.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh man. I mean, you're encouraging me, Andy, of like you're just so kind to be like, this is so fascinating. And like that's just really encouraging, just to, see where you're coming from. I mean, you're in Ireland, like this is still just so mind-blowing and so, so cool. But just to see like the common threads of, small town to small
Mm,
town, there's a lot of similarities, a lot of different things, but um just to have this open-mindedness. And I think the easier thing, as we get older is just to be like, oh well, I already know it or I lived it, and like it's just that's just good how it's gonna be. Like I can't
yeah.
be surprised anymore. And that's something that, I'm continuing to be like, okay, God, like you have permission to surprise me. Like continue to like have me be in awe at a sunset again and again. Like I always want to be amazed, or I always want to believe the good in people,
Yeah.
you know because I know like we all have, we all have shortcomings. Like I know I have not been a good friend in different seasons, and I know when I've been a great friend, but I always want to strive to be a good friend to people. And so you think about, okay, how can I do that well? And being curious by other, like being curious by other people and what their story is and what they're doing. Like I think that is like the kindest gift to people. Just again, just to sit and be curious and to see, okay, what are you doing? Like, this is really
Yeah.
cool. And this is just deeply encouraging to me because like I feel like I can have sometimes the same conversation again and again. And so this has been really refreshing of like, okay, this is cool. Like I'm glad that these things, might not be new, but that is interesting because for me it's my life, it's my
Of
whole
course.
life. And so, for you, like Ireland's your whole, your life and your world. And I get to learn more about like that whole, how all that works, and just the incredible places that we get to be and the stories that we have that we carry.
Absolutely, and couldn't have said it better myself. Because like I think for the time we've been chatting, I definitely think there's a lot for whether one person takes something away from this. That is kind of I think that is powerful enough.
Mm.
Like of course, you know, like not to sort of follower centric, but you kind of want to get your message out to a lot of as many people as you
Yeah.
can. But at the end of the day, it's
Mhm.
one of those things where if one person like
Mhm.
takes something away from this and is able to come to either your eye after this and be like, you know what, I particularly enjoyed this. This resonated with me. I never looked at things this way, and that I think is kind of the power of podcasting. I say, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you and you from your own perspective in your podcast, like you probably could have the same sort of perspective as well.
Hmm. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I love podcasting, and again, I love that I feel like I was. Is it okay to say like a friend of podcasting? Like, be
Mhm.
like, because when you start like being a consumer, you really feel like you're friends with the hosts, like and the
Yeah.
guests that people are there. I'm like, oh, what do you do? Like, what did you learn this week? Or I'm like, oh, I was hanging out with my friends. Like, there's a productivity podcast. Like, like those hosts are now kind of moving on to different careers like a couple years ago. But I was like, oh yeah, Courtney, Blake, and Verbs. I'm like, how to do productivity stuff. I was like, this is so fun because I'm like, it's all this nerdy stuff about how to use a planner and how to use it well. And there's just so many cool conversations where you get to have a front row seat to conversations like this.
Yeah.
And literally, like, these are like the best kind of conversations where, like, I can think of last week, I sat down with my friend Natalie and we just got to share like what was going on in life, like different life season, new house or moving, different things like on her end, and then me, preparing for like kind of the summer market season, all these different things. But just sharing like the real things and also the good things that God is doing in our lives. And so it's so encouraging and so kind when you just are like, man, podcasting, it's like, it feels like you just get a, sit across the table from someone. And even though I don't have coffee with me, I'm like, okay, maybe I would. And I think that is just the coolest thing. And I never thought like, honestly, it blows me away. Like, I didn't think I'd be on the other side of that. I thought, oh, I couldn't do that, again, go into that. And so I think if anything for our conversation is you have no idea if you just say yes. You have no idea. And just try it and you might fall in love with it and fall in love with like the opportunities it brings and the people you get to meet. And I know my life is more deeply enriched by these kind of conversations with friends and family. And that's my whole point of like, I want to have deeper conversations and not just the shallow ones. And
Yeah.
you know, it's okay. We talk about the weather. It's okay. We'll get through it. It's good. But I'm like, okay, let's talk about some real stuff, like what's
Yeah.
really going on in your life. And I think we all need more friends, more people like that who are willing to sit with us.
Absolutely. Like a 100%. Like I think the stories that people have to tell, honestly, like to miss out on that is would be a shame. But Addie, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for taking your time to appear on Behind the Camera with AndyGames. Absolute, very insightful, inspiring conversation. And again, just thank you so much. Just one last thing. I would like to sort of give you the floor just to sort of promote yourself, your titles, where the listeners can find you. I will put all the links and everything into the show notes, but I'd like to give you the floor just to sort of get the message out about where we can find you and your works.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm not going to stop thanking you, Andy. You're so kind.
Thank you.
And I love podcasts. And so this has been, again, so much fun. I feel like it's been a blessing to me. So just thank you, thank you, thank you. And for friends who are new friends, I'm very excited to be your friend. And you can really get in contact with me or, stay up to date with all my creative things at addisonott.com. And it is AddisonOtt.com. And there's even links to get to Gentle and Lowly Co. And all the different things I'm doing. And my book is on there as well, but it's on Amazon. And then Instagram, I like to share a lot of my life and honestly what God's doing in it. And so it's just Addie.ot. And so ADDIE and then .OTT. And honestly, like my title right now is being an author, multidisciplinary, creative and entrepreneur. And so I have a lot of different passions and trying to figure out how to steward those things well. And so if you're really interested in what that kind of looks like, come over to the Gentle and Lily Co podcast. We have conversations every Monday and it's a lot of fun. We have all different kind of conversations from people who are nomadic lifestyle traveling to people who are starting over again or in all different seasons and stuff. And so it is like honestly such a joy to be able to sit down and have extended conversations like this kind of over there. And so if you want to be friends and let's connect and hang out, even more online. But again, I'm just so thankful, Andy, and you're just so kind and such a gracious host. Can't.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words. And like, again, for everybody listening, definitely check out addisonot.com and Addie's Instagram and Gentle and Lowly Co and the podcast as well. Just wanted to reiterate that. Addie, you've been an incredible guest. Thank you so much. It's been a very enlightening conversation. Like I say, I do enjoy having these types of conversations. It's always refreshing to see people's perspectives on it. Like I can't really stress that enough. And I just wanted to thank you again. Thank you for your time. It has been incredible. And yes, all the best for your new book coming out. Hopefully we get to see it soon, but I will keep up with any updates. But yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you again. And hey, if I ever make it to Ireland, I'm going to someday. So we can, go out and my favorite beverage is a Coke. So we can go get Coke with you and your wife or something and do some sightseeing.
Absolutely.
It can happen.
Sounds good. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And there you have it. That was my conversation with Addie Ott. Being a person who doesn't live their life through faith, I always find it incredibly interesting to talk to people who do and really take in their perspective on things. I honestly think that whether you believe or not, it's always good to ask questions. It's always good to learn, really to gain that perspective on how other people live their lives. After all, everybody's different, and how you live your life isn't a one-size-fits-all thing. As always, this has been Behind the Camera with AndyGames. I've been your host, AndyGames. Any and all likes, shares, follows, subscriptions, etc. on all platforms are hugely, hugely appreciated. We will be back with another installment of Behind the Camera with AndyGames next week, but until then, peace.